mida tähendab ühe riigi jaoks tuumaenergia tootmine.
Külaskäik tuumajaama suletud uste taha.
Ma pole kunagi varem viibinud tuumajaamas ja kindlasti mitte nii lähedal ühele tuumareaktorile.
Euroopa ja tegelikult kogu maailm otsib võimalusi, kuidas kindlustada enda energiatootmise tulevik, mis peab olema süsinikuheitme vaba. Minu selja taga on Forsmarki tuumajaam ühtekokku 3 reaktoriga. See annab Rootsi elektrienergia toodangust umbes 15%. Täna on meil võimalus minna siia tuumajaama, et näha lähemalt, mida tähendab ühe riigi jaoks tuumaenergia tootmine. Kiiver on peas, kaitseriietus samuti seljas, ongi aeg siseneda tuumajaama südamesse. Tuumajaama sisenemisel on väga oluline panna käima ka isiklik dosimeeter.
The absolutely biggest risk we have producing power with nuclear is the radioactivity. That is the potential effect we have on our surroundings, the environment and health. So that's why everything we do aims to prevent that from happening. While operating as we do today, producing a lot, we have practically no impact on the environment at all.
There is always, of course, the risk of radioactive leakages and things related to, containing radioactivity, which is very strong, of course, inside the nuclear power plant. It always needs to be contained in one way or the other, and there are, unfortunately, many historical examples showing that this has not always been as easy as nuclear engineers and nuclear operators have thought.
A number of studies in Europe have shown that within 5 kilometers of nuclear power plants in Europe, there are cancer shadows, especially childhood leukemias. Maybe the new generation of reactors will be safer.
Paar minutit olen saanud tuumajaamas ringi jalutada üsna ohutus kohas ilmselt, sest dosimeeter näitab ümarat nulli. Aga võib öelda, et siin on 3 värvisüsteem näitamaks radiatsiooni ohutaset. Siin on näha, et ilmselt selles konteineris on midagi sellist, millel on juba järgmine tase. Sinine on see, et ütleme täiesti või võrdlemisi ohutu. Kollane on järgmine aste ja punane näitab seda, et seal on juba erireeglid. Kollase reegli puhul tuleb panna lisaks endale selga ka uued jalanõud, mis on kollast värvi. Minul näete on praegu täiesti sinised. Ja siis ka siit kummikindad, et radiatsiooni ohtu välistada. Ma arvan, et see on minu jaoks mõnes mõttes elu suur sündmus. Ma pole kunagi varem viibinud tuumajaamas ja kindlasti mitte nii lähedal ühele tuumareaktorile. Nimelt seal selle, võib öelda siis basseini vee all asubki reaktor, mis siit selle energia tuumakütusest välja toob. Ja parasjagu on siin käimas hooldustööd. Kord aastas toimub siin ka 1/5 tuumakütuse vahetus. Ja see vesi siin basseinis peab olema äärmiselt puhas, igasugustest mineraalidest vaba, et need seadmed tuumajaamas ei roostetaks.
So as you can see here, there's a lot of people, but that's actually a really rare sight in here. Because normally we don't have any workers in here. Because normally it's a red zone actually. but the halvation time is very fast. So we only need to shut down the reactors for about 3 minutes for this to become a yellow and green zone. So much more workable than the red zone. So if you were here at any other time, you would not see any people in here. And the glass here is leaded because if you were here when this process was running, we need a leaded glass to not get radiation out. But now this leaded glass is not needed, but it's still here because we don't change it.
Forsmarki tuumaelektrijaama reaktorite kütus on uraan. Uraani molekulide tuumade lõhustumisel tekib palju soojusenergiat, millega keedetakse vett. Keemisel tekkiva veeauruga saab turbiinide ja generaatorite abil elektrit toota.
I would also like to stress thermal pollution as one issue. These days when we see climate change coming in, leading to hotter temperatures, we know what hotter temperatures might mean. And the nuclear power always produces a lot of excess heat. This heat needs to be disposed of in one way or the other, and usually then it has to go into some river or a lake or the sea.
For a power plant you need cooling water, and in this case we use seawater. So what you can see here is our cooling water channel, which are led into the nuclear power plants. And we use this to cool down the steam in the process. So when the steam has come to the turbine, it goes by to the condenser, and there it meets pipes with seawater, cooling it down, transforming it back to water again, and so this water is pumped back to the reactor.
Talking about excess heat, this is kind of something that also affects nature, right?
It is correct, and that's why we measure, of course, in the cooling water that we let out in the sea, and we raise the temperature a couple of degrees. So it's not more than that, but that's also in the permit that we have to make sure that we track the potential impact on the environment. But in Sweden we are fortunate to have the sea as cooling.
Umbes kolmandik tuumajaamas toodetud soojusenergiast muudetakse elektriks. Ülejäänud 2/3 on jääksoojus, mis tuleb maha jahutada. Andmed näitavad, et Soome ja Rootsi tuumaelektrijaamade jahutusvetega jõuab Läänemerre igal aastal soojust. Näiteks hoiab Forsmarkist merre juhitud üles soojendatud vesi 2–3 ruutkilomeetri suuruse ala Botnia lahes talvel jäävaba. Lisaks on kõrgem veetemperatuur loonud Läänemerre jõudnud võõrliikidele jaamade lähistele sobivamad tingimused elamiseks ja edasilevimiseks. Kuid sellega jahutusvee mure ei piirdu.
Maybe that sounds strange, but take a look, for example, at the recent heat waves in Europe that we have seen during this summer and also last summer, which forced nuclear operators in a range of European countries to temporarily shut down their nuclear power plants due to the risk of not sufficient amounts of cooling water for nuclear power plants. And here in the Baltic region we have other possible threats coming from pollution, let's say algal blooms in the Baltic Sea, or oil spills from tankers passing from Russia just here by the northern Estonian coast. These environmental threats are interpreted by nuclear operators these days as severe potential threats to nuclear security.
Siin käib nüüd kontroll, et kõik esemed, mis olid kaasas tuumajaamas, on ka päriselt radiatsioonivabad pärast seal käimist.
Don't forget that the nuclear power plant is not only something that is built in one spot only, it's something that is integrated into a much wider geographical system where the nuclear operator will depend on smooth connections with a range of countries in the world for the supply of nuclear fuel, obviously, but also various nuclear fuel services like enrichment services or nuclear fuel element fabrication, which are very specialized services, not being supplied by that many countries. And what you often see is that nuclear operators, they have to conclude agreements with a range of different countries in the world, and the nuclear fuel, while on its way to the nuclear power plant, it's being transported over sea, over rail, by road, and so on, often from very different parts of the world to here, and crisscrossing the oceans, crisscrossing the continents.
I wouldn't say everything is a challenge, I guess, but I wouldn't say it's that bigger challenge, logistically wise. What you really need to produce or have nuclear is your safety culture, your safety aspects, the system regarding surrounding the nuclear facility with the authorities, with your legislations and such. That differs, and that you can never ever prioritize that down.
Selline näeb välja ühe tuumajaama kontrollruum, ehk siis siit juhitakse kogu protsessi energiatootmises. How much fuel does a nuclear power plant or a reactor that we see here need?
So in Forsmarki we have 3 reactors, and each reactor needs about 700 fuel assemblies. And a fuel assembly is a bundle of 10 rods, and each rods contain uranium pellets which are stacked on top of each other. And these uranium pellets, there are about 30,000 per fuel assembly. And then in the entire core we have about 120 tons of uranium.
Sellised näevadki välja tuumakütuse elemendid. Siin on sees peenikesed vardad ja iga selle varda sees on rida väikseid uraanigraanuleid. Ja arvutused näitavad seda, et 2 sellist pisikest graanulit annavad elektrivajaduse terveks aastaks ühele maja pidamisele. Nii et kui mõelda, siis tõesti see on väga energiatõhus elektri tootmise viis, aga tuleb tõdeda, et ka äärmiselt radioaktiivne, see tähendab ohtlik. You depend on different countries as well, because you need fuel, for example.
It depends on the type of reactor that you have. To create fuel, you need uranium, you need to process it in a certain way. So today you can buy your fuel from US, you can buy it from France, you can buy it from German factories, from Spain. So it depends. There are not many suppliers, but there are several.
And this logistical challenge also then includes various ethical issues, legal issues relating to the conditions of producing these fuels, these services also in those countries where this happens. So uranium mining is a kind of obvious issue that needs to be taken into account. Can we guarantee that it's taken care of in a morally, legally acceptable way? Isn't it the case that we would give rise to environmental problems in those countries where these services are being supplied?
How will this used nuclear fuel will be managed later on?
Used nuclear fuel is very radioactive, and it continues to be radioactive for thousands of years, so it's a very, very long time. And it needs to be stored safely for all this time. And Finland and Sweden are actually leading in this regard. So the Swedish Nuclear Waste and Management Company will build a final repository for Sweden's nuclear fuel waste. And they will put the fuel in the repository and store it safely for a very long time.
Järgmises saates uurime lähemalt, kuidas ladustatakse radioaktiivseid jäätmeid ning küsime, kas iga riik vajab tuumaelektrijaama?